Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Way-T Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And I'm delighted to share with you our guest from Longevity Labs. Our guest is Don Moxley, who is a trained exercise physiologist and has spent 25 of the last 35 years as an assistant and adjunct professor. While teaching, Don has kept a foot in wearable technology industry and high performance athletics. Beginning in 2017, Don made a major change in his life, began operating via personal mission rather than definition. That's a good one to talk about. His mission, understanding and directing individual changes that alleviate suffering and contribute to the betterment of well people, has led to some amazing opportunities to learn and impact the community around him. And he currently works with Longevity Labs, an Austrian company, and is launching their flagship product called Spermidine Life. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And it's an amazing molecule that has a direct impact on longevity and healthy aging. Don, welcome to the show.
I'm excited to be here, Wade. I've been looking forward to this one since we met.
Well, we just met recently at the Wake Up Orange County events. And for those who don't know, that we're a big supporter of the biological optimization, biohacking, longevity, health optimization technology that Wake Ups are becoming famous for. And now that we have meetups in the real world, it's really nice to connect with other like-minded people. And of course, we had a booth right literally beside each other at the most recent event. And you were telling me about some unique research on longevity and this Spermidine product. But maybe before we get into that, you might want to share with our listeners kind of how you got to where you are today, your background and all that sort of stuff.
Well, much like your story, which I heard you tell, is I grew up on a farm in Eastern Ohio. We raised, at one time, we had up to 2,000 head of beef cattle. And I finished up high school there with every intention of going to Ohio State and studying agriculture and going home and feeding beef cattle. Now, I was a decent high school wrestler. Won a lot of matches, did pretty good. So I decided to walk on the wrestling team at Ohio State. Now, that was a bit of a challenge. The first year I practiced about 15 days, injured a knee, had surgery on it, was basically done. I used to cut a lot of weight. I currently walk around at about 275 pounds. And I'm the smallest brother. I have two brothers and I'm the smallest of the three. I have a younger brother that's 6'9" and probably a biscuit over 350. But I used to cut from about 230 to 177. Didn't pay off. Came back a sophomore year. We had a returning All-American at 177. So I moved up to 190. Did twice as well that year, practiced 30 days, hurt the other knee, had surgery on it, and had to start asking, what does it take to be successful in wrestling? And now I had this intersection that was just an amazing, Ohio State was an amazing place to be back then. That our strength coach in the athletic department had come from the University of Nebraska, and one of his graduate assistants, a guy by the name of Ted Lambrinides. Ted is famous in the strength and conditioning circuit. I had one of my college teammates had a roommate by the name of Kevin Akins. And at the time, Kevin Akins had the third longest shot in the world. And he said, if you want to get strong, I'll take you where you get strong. And he walks me into Louis Simmons's garage.
I was going to say the West Side Barbell Club must have been connected there.
So before this was before West Side was really West Side, right? This was
pre-West Side.
This was early Louis. He had moved out of his basement up into his garage, and there was just this amazing group of mutants working their way through this facility. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then I had a professor at Ohio State. His name was Robert Bartels, Dr. Robert Bartels. He was a protege to the American researcher that actually described energy systems. So when you take a look at how we generate energy, ATP, PC, glycolytic, and oxidative, well, Ed Fox was Bob Bartel's mentor. And so I've got this great intersection of just three excellent mentors. I started to get strong and I started to get a lot better. I finished up at Ohio State in 85, won a Big Ten title, captained the team. I still have a couple records that still stand for fall. So, for a kid from Barnesville, I wound up making pretty good. But fell in love with exercise physiology. Finished up my graduate work, finished up my undergraduate, finished up grad school in 3/4 there, and have been in exercise science ever since.
That's beautiful. I always love those background stories. And so, what is you talked about a mission shift a few years ago? There was a shift, and this oftentimes happens. People kind of go down a career, or there seems to be a series of, doesn't look like connections, but all of a sudden there's usually a watershed moment, and then right. It all kind of gels together. Was there something like that happened in your life that kind of put you where you are today?
Well, I was forced to do this. That, as you said earlier, I've been in front of a classroom almost ever since I got out of grad school. Right. I love teaching. It's one of my favorite things to do in the world. But I am, when you start teaching at a collegiate level, if you're not tenure track, if you're not working on that PhD, you're kind of an oddity. I never had a desire to finish the PhD and go down that road. But I love to study. I love to learn. And I'd finished up teaching at a small college in Western Ohio. And actually, the wrestling coach at Ohio State came to me and said he needed some help with his team, and stepped in and assisted with one of his wrestlers. And we figured some things out, looking at training, recovery, understanding heart rate variability, and how to apply training loads and so forth. And I wound up working as a sports scientist at Ohio State from 2015 through 18. That 17-18 season, we measured 3.5 million data points on a wrestling team. We were working with the Air Force Research Lab out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So our data was being incorporated with Naval Special Operators and Delta Force and all the special operations groups. So it was an amazing experience. But what I learned is Ohio State didn't particularly want me there. I was an outlier again. I was not part of the traditional college athletic department strength and conditioning dogma. I was a scientist that was looking at, listen, these things that you're saying may not be true. Let's figure out what's true first before we start to convert them to religious doctrine. And I was basically forced to leave. I couldn't afford to stay there. And about the same time, I got an invitation to go work in the cannabis industry down in Florida. And ironically, while I was working in the sports science, I had another one of these interactions of multiple vectors that had some of my friends from the wearable industry reach out to me because they knew I did heart rate variability. They knew it was important to me. And they said, what do you know about cannabis and HRV? And I said, my athletes are all NCAA athletes. So cannabis is not part of the program. But I started to do some research and I said, whoa, there's something here that we need to understand. And I was made just a wonderful offer. It was like, it was the universe saying, you can stay here and struggle at Ohio State, or you can change your life right now. And so how do you go from college professor, athletic department, sports scientist to selling weed in Florida?
There's an interesting, I want to unpack that a little bit because recently we entered into starting a couple of years ago, and we've solidified that with our company with a research university in Croatia. Mm-hmm. And so we have now a corporate and institutional relationship where they have what I would say the intellectual horsepower that we need to kind of have breakthroughs.
Sure.
We have the financial means to get them the testing equipment that allows them to get data points.
Awesome.
But I want to tie this in because I think this is pertinent because I'm a big fan of listening to Brett Weinstein, the evolutionary biologist. Mm-hmm. And, he's got a podcast called Dark Horse. And he talked about specifically him and his brother, Eric. Eric's a little bit harder to relate to. he's like a super G. They're both extraordinary intellectuals, but they were talking about this institutional rot that is happening, where just within their sphere of influence, there is mega breakthroughs in a variety of areas, which is essentially going unreported and undistributed to the world. And now many of these, intellectuals and people who are on the bleeding edge are in this kind of, they're in this no man's land, as if they stay with the institution, which, has tenure or has these sort of a place where you can,
you're handcuffed in.
You're handcuffed in, but what your breakthroughs are, which you're trying to betterment society, are going to get buried inside of the institutional gobbledygook. And yet many of them are having reservations of moving into the commercial practice because of, some of the unsavory aspects of certain corporations, but then again, also recognize that that is the best place where you can distribute ideas to the world. What would you say and this is for all our intellectuals who might be facing this dilemma. How did you walk yourself through that decision to say, hey, you know what? I've gone as far as I can go here. I'm still in pursuit of the truth. And now I need to get a kind of a corporate partnership that allows me to do what I do. What was that like for you?
Wade, I have to tell you, what's come out of this for me is that while I consider myself an absolute scientist, there's no two ways about it, that while I absolutely live and breathe the science, I think you make decisions based on evidence. I am not bound by peer-reviewed, double-blind evidence. Is that what we know is that you can have evidence, you can have clinical evidence ahead of the studies. And this is what creates opportunities. And if you're going to be in high human performance, you can't wait for things to come out in medicine, science, sports, and exercise, or certified strength and conditioning. You have to be functioning at a different level. Now, with that said, there's a lot of people operating in these systems that frankly are operating using the next thing to religious dogma. And the fact that this is my program, this is how we do it, this is our setting, I'm West Side, I'm HIT, I'm this, I'm that. Mm-hmm. Here's what we learned from our data with the wrestling team. We qualified the entire starting lineup for nationals my last year there, 10 guys, first time in school history. Now, I had 2 different strength coaches I was working with there on the team, and we actually had 4. So individual guys had people they like to work with. We had the university strength coach. We had a strength coach for our RTC. And so let's say 3. And the question is, who do you follow? Because they each had their own dogma. Yeah. And I sat back and I said, listen, there's no evidence that any of your programs is better than any of the others. So I'm going to let the athletes make the choice. We are going to do strength work. We know strength is important. And we see that across from high performance to longevity. It's a key element. Mm-hmm. But what you do has yet to be determined. So we send 10 guys to nationals. 3 of them were from one program, 3 from the other, and 4 from the third. So it's as close to an even break as you can get. We had 8 All-Americans, 2, 3, and 3. Okay, again, close to an even break. So what I learned from that is, and again, there are 3 completely different programs. One was a very high, I would say low volume, high intensity. One was a kind of a bodybuilder program, and the other one was a traditional college strength coach program. You know what? What I know now, and as a professional, number one, I don't care what you do in the weight room. There's some basic things you need to do. Don't get me wrong. I do care. There's some basic things, but I'm not going to get hung up in programs. When I was teaching this little school I was teaching at in Western Ohio, one of my students kept saying, I'm a West Side guy. I'm a West Side guy. And I'm like, listen, I've known Louis Simmons for almost 35 years. I love what he teaches. It's a great program. I said, but understand whether it's West Side or HIT or Nebraska or volume, listen, this is the difference between Baptists and Catholics and Methodists and Episcopalians. We all study from the same book. Okay. The rules change, but it's all from the same book. And this is an important part of what I learned that year. And from a sports science standpoint, what we identified. Okay. So I'll ask you this question. We were a wrestling team. Okay. When you think of a wrestling team, should the training be, and this will be two big categories, should be aerobic or anaerobic?
It's a good question, because you're in both, essentially, because you need explosive power, but if you run out of endurance capabilities, you're going to be gassed out on the mat.
There you go. And so what we did, so again, we had 3.5 million data points to work from, including heart rate variability, recoverability, strength, cardio, all these things. So I took my team and we broke them into 3 groups. So I had a group of 9 guys that were all Americans or better. So they're all Americans, national champions, or I had 2 Olympians and 2 world champions in that group. I had a group of guys, I think the N on that was 12 or 15, that were able to wear the uniform for us and get into a point scoring situation with the team, but were never able to make it to Big Tens to achieve All-American status. Mm-hmm. And then I had a group that never wore the uniform. Now the guys that never wore the uniform you had 2 and 3 time state champs in that group. There were some talented kids, and these kids came in and wrestled with my group 1 and 2 every day. Right. So these are good wrestlers. The number one factor for determining your ability to move from group 3 to group 1, VO2.
Fascinating.
So when you look at it, it's not necessarily like a marathoner VO2, but your ability to win a wrestling match is about your ability to recover, your ability to go to the edge, you go out of bounds, you come back, so this ability to recover, and ultimately you're generating energy throughout the match. The athlete that can generate the most energy has an advantage. Well, you build your cardiovascular system, and that was the number one predictor. Strength. So we did bench press, squat, deadlift, weight holds, pull-ups. The only thing that determined your ability to move from group 3 to group 2 was your ability to deadlift 2 times your body weight. If you couldn't deadlift 2 times your body weight, you probably couldn't get into group 2. All of group 1 could do that too. The thing that determined whether you could move from group 2 to group 1, pull-ups and weighted grip strength. So your ability to hold your body weight. So we put half their body weight in each hand and measure how long they could hold it, or we would do pull-ups. So muscular endurance determined your ability to move from group 2 to group 1. Now, that goes against all university-based strength and conditioning dogma. Bench press predicted nothing.
Right.
Okay. Squats predicted nothing. And one of our challenges is that what is the culture that you establish in the room, and what is the culture you establish with your team? My coach I was in way too many meetings where they said, we need a bench press club. And I said, there's no way you're doing a bench press club while I'm part of the staff.
Right.
You can bench press. I didn't say don't bench press. Just don't celebrate it. We squatted, we front squatted, we did trap bar deadlifts. We worked that posterior chain hard, but we didn't celebrate it. That was nothing on the wall. What you celebrate are the things that make a difference that you want people to engage in. And then finally, that last year we sent 10 guys to nationals. We had 8 All-Americans. They'll set a school record. I could have told you the 2 guys that would not make All-American the first day of the tournament, based on heart rate variability, based on their ability to recover. And by that time, we'd gotten to the point to where I could almost determine whether someone would win or lose a match that by measuring them that morning. Based on recovery.
Wow. So where that person's HRV would be a good indicator of what, like, basically because at this point you're dealing with, such a a low variance between the skill of the athlete.
Exactly.
Like how ready are they on that particular day is going to oftentimes win the day, is basically what you're saying.
Exactly. Well, and again, we're competing. So while we were there, we won a national title. We finished second or third every other year. Won Big Tens 3 years, and so we're winning Big Tens, beating Penn State, but we lost to them twice. We finished second to them twice at nationals. So, the top teams in the country at the time were Penn State, Ohio State, Iowa, Oklahoma State's good, and we all recruited the same kids. Every kid that we saw wrestle in someone else's jersey, we had in on a recruiting trip, but for some reason we lost them. Right. So, we were putting racehorses in the barn. We were training them hard. We had good skills. So literally the determining factor at that level was your ability to recover and get the 3 to 5 match wins that you need to make All-American. And we see this at a lot of levels. So, this was, it was a great experience. And so what I was saying is that, Wade, I believe there's more to our existence than just what we see in front of us. I think you're led. I feel a very strong, I'll use the term spiritual lead. I think the universe said, you're done here. You've done all you can. You've moved the needle all you can. It's time for you to go to a new place. Went down to Florida, worked in the cannabis industry, did a deep dive into understanding the endocannabinoid system, cannabis, which was just an incredible opportunity. I don't think you can listen. I think if you're trying to do high performance athletics and you're not at least trying to understand cannabinoids and terpenes, you're kidding yourself. It's an absolute, I think when you're measuring HRV, you're measuring endocannabinoid system status. And you can modify it. And then while I was there, met a guy, and I get a call one day and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" He said, "I've got this buddy in Austria. They've got this company." I was passively recognized the term autophagy. I had not done a deep dive into it yet. He said, "Have you ever heard of a molecule called spermidine?" And I had not. He said, he says, "I want you to do the same thing for us that you did in Florida for that brand." I'm the director of applied science and brand development. So, my job is to help this company build a brand that's based on science. So that's what we do. So now gone down the rabbit hole on autophagy and polyamines and things like that.
That's really, really great. And so that kind of picks us up where we met.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about the science and development around this particular molecule. Maybe you can share with us what spermidine is, what was the etymology or the history of how it came, and then how you became part of sharing this with people around the world.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: supercharge your protein shake. Everyone knows protein shakes are a great way to sneak in extra protein, build more muscle, even replace meals and burn more fat. The problem is the highest quality protein typically absorbs at around 40%. One way to fix this and dramatically increase how quickly and effective your protein shake digests is to add 2 to 3 capsules of masszymes into your shake. One research study showed that pre-digested protein during a meal increased muscle growth significantly. To take advantage of this, just blend the open capsules into your shake, and within 15 minutes or less, the enzymes will have begun to break down the protein into amino acids. This can make your shakes at least 2 to 3 times more potent. Some people do this and sip on their shake while lifting to provide their muscles with a steady stream of amino acids during their workout. To save 10% on masszymes, use the code SHAKE10, that's SHAKE10, at masszymes.com. That's SHAKE10 at masszymes.com.
So spermidine is a molecule we've known about for hundreds of years. It was first described in the late 1700s. Anton von Leeuwenhoek, who invented the microscope, he was a textile salesperson, and they invented the microscope for counting fabric counts, thread counts in fabrics.
Wow.
And so literally they call him the father of microbiology. He was really the father of figuring out how to count threads, and out of it came this microscope. Well, he's enough of a freak that after he gets his microscope, somehow semen winds up on one of the slides and he winds up looking at it. So I don't know if he was trying to see if his swimmers looked like him or not. I don't know. But they described a crystalline structure in the semen. And it's the first time it was ever discussed. It got the name about 200 years later, in the late 1800s. But then as we move into the late 1900s, you really start to see the emergence of the study of spermidine as an active molecule. And what we know now, Wade, is that it is a molecule that is in every cell of your body, men, women, plants, and animals. It's a very important molecule in a process that's called autophagy, this cellular cleaning, cellular renewal process. Now, we're pretty cutting edge here. You know, they just gave a Nobel Prize in 2017 to a Japanese researcher for describing autophagy. So we're just really starting to understand that process. But what we know based on the research from one of the founders of our company, a guy by the name of Dr. Frank Medeo, Frank, with his research, saw that spermidine supplementation in human senescent cells caused them to be non-senescent anymore. They didn't go through apoptosis. They didn't go through a self-death. So this is where they really started to look. And what we know now, Wade, is that, again, we all have spermidine in our bodies, but it starts to decline as we age. But people who age well into their 90s and hundreds have spermidine levels similar to those in their 30s. Okay. So that, you know, we have that epidemiological data to support that. We have some recent research that shows that consuming spermidine orally raises spermidine levels in your cells. It also crosses the blood-brain barrier, so we know it's impacting above the neck. We have a lot of wonderful mental effects coming from spermidine supplementation: improved cognition, improved hippocampal thickness, increased thickness of the brain that's typically victimized by Alzheimer's disease. So it has a positive relationship there. We know that populations that live in blue zones have high spermidine diets. And so when we start taking a look at spermidine, it's one of those interesting molecules. We harvest ours from wheat germ. Again, we're an Austrian company. We get wheat germ from Central Europe, southern Germany, Austria, northern Italy, Switzerland. And we have a process of extracting and refining the wheat germ into a high spermidine concentrate. And that's what we sell in our product called Spermidine Life.
That's fascinating. I remember Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the day was using wheat germ as part of his shake strategy back in the 70s. And of course, he comes from Austria. So
sure,
some etymology about some learning. This is fascinating. And I think for our listeners, many who are engaged in intermittent fasting or understand the principles between why caloric restriction, autophagy, can enhance what they feel as life expectancy and a variety of other conditions. But I think for some people, that's a very difficult endeavor. And so what you're potentially suggesting is that through supplementation, you can get would that be, they say you would get some of those anti-aging benefits not from the fasting side, but just from what is the mechanism? Like what's the piece that's kicking that up?
I think certainly from a marketing standpoint, yeah, spermidine is a product that gives you autophagy without fasting. From an exercise science or from a scientist standpoint, Wade, I believe, listen, our nutrition, our understanding of nutrition comes from university studies for the most part, right?
Right.
And I've, over the 25 years, I've probably taught nutrition a dozen times. And we teach it using a textbook. The textbook is what we call Wardwell Nutrition. And it's proteins, fibers, proteins, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, water. We teach the 6 nutrients, and then we spend time talking about food labels. And that's what I call Wardwell Nutrition. Personally, I believe I believe autophagy will be included in textbooks a decade from now. I think it'll take that long for it to clear the academic circles and to get it into textbooks. I believe, listen, I've taught it. I have never seen the term ketogenic in a nutrition textbook. There's listen, we talk about beta hydroxybutyrate or acetyl acetate in our biochemistry classes. We don't talk about them in our nutrition classes. Mm-hmm. And they need to become part of our nutritional dogma. That needs to become part of, but I think it'll take a decade for it to get there. There is no doubt in my mind that to live a full, healthy life, to take full advantage of both health span and lifespan, you have to engage autophagy. You have to. It has to be part of it. Intermittent fasting or fasting is the shortest pathway to that. Spermidine helps. There's no doubt about it. As you increase spermidine, autophagy increases as well. But when you start talking about, let me think of an exercise analogy. I can go in and I can go with, listen, I watch the Today Show, and inevitably every week they've got someone come on, do exercise, and they show you how you can exercise with soup cans. Okay. Right. Yeah. Darn close to masturbation, but not far from it. Yeah. If you want to do strength for longevity, you have to pick up some heavy stuff, really heavy stuff. This is clear. Now, whether you do it in a deadlift or a squat or something like that, I'm not going to argue, but you have to pick up heavy stuff. If you nutritionally, if you want longevity through nutritional sources, you've got to limit calorie intake. You've practically got
one consistent factor is caloric restriction.
Well, you have to eliminate sugars. Okay, it's one of the biggest challenges that we have. We live in a society where we have I call it caloric toxic. We have so much access to sugary drinks, which is the other end of the spectrum from caloric restriction or autophagy. And then when you go to intermittent fasting or fasting, ceremonial fasting, there's a reason why it's included in every major religion in the world. It's a health benefit that comes with that.
What's old is new. And
what's old is new. That's good.
Leading the way. And I guess, so with your work with Spermidine, who is the people who are benefiting the most from Spermidine? What kind of dosage do they require? Because the devil's in the details and the devil's in the dosage.
Yep, absolutely.
And so I guess, is there a sliding scale based on age? Is there a responsiveness on age? Maybe you can unpack some of the things.
There's absolutely a responsiveness on age. So one of the things we do is that if you purchase Spermidine from our website, along the way in our marketing process, you will get an invitation to have a phone call with either myself or we have one other person that takes those calls in the company. We looked at that data. I think we've spoken with about 500 customers in the last 10, 11 months. If you're 60 or 70 years old or over, those people notice an effect to taking Spermidine almost certainly within 3 weeks. Now, remember what I said earlier, we see Spermidine levels start to drop with age. So, and if you're in your 30s, if you're in your late 30s, I don't know that I'd recommend, well, let me put it in this perspective. I think you look at longevity like you do at retirement. Right. When you start investing in your 401k, it's certainly going to pay dividends on the long horizon.
Right.
So if you have high Spermidine levels as a 30-year-old and you continue to invest in it, it may take longer for you to feel it, to notice it. Again, when I go back to when we talk to our customers, 3 to 6 months The older you are,
you'll be 95. You'll be 95 and saying, gee, I don't know if I'm feeling anything from this yet.
Right.
As you're deadlifting twice your body weight at the gym.
And living the life that you want. This is what's so important. I think about longevity like a hockey game. There's 3 periods, right? And my daughter played travel hockey. I'm just a nut. You spend the first period of your life in learning, in school and growing up. And you spend the second period of your life, what I call in service to others, work, raising family, things like that. Mm-hmm. But it's the third period of your life. That's yours. Okay. It's my wife and I are getting ready to enter that phase that my daughter, who's now 23, she's finishing up her first year of grad school. She moved back in with us for grad school, which I could have never done with my parents. But she'll move out of our home for sure in a year. And at that point in time, my wife and I move into our third period. And I want that. Listen, I want that to be a rich time of my life. I tell the story that, I've coached Olympic medalists. I've coached national champions. I've coached men's and women's teams. I've worked with the women's volleyball team at Ohio State. We were second in the country. We swept the Big Ten. We had great players. I love that experience. But without a doubt, my greatest coaching experience was when I got to coach my daughter's 8th grade field hockey team. That was awesome. Now, as I move into my third period, I want to coach my grandkids' teams and my great-grandkids' teams. And I want to be able to take my wife on trips of a lifetime. If you look over my shoulder right now, you see the picture of my wife. That's on the shore up there in Michigan. The middle pictures, the 3 of we're up in Lake Placid, New York at the Olympic Training Center. The little one, we're skiing in Colorado, my wife and I. You define yourself with the pictures on your wall. No one takes a picture of a scale and hangs it on the wall. Mm-hmm. Exercising to lose weight, the fitness industry failed with that goal. Failed. Big fat F. But when we start taking a look at fitness and longevity, these are the key elements. And again, it's about the pictures on the wall that you define yourself by. And that third is when I'm just moving into mine. So we're really focusing on it. Now, with that being said, you have to think of longevity in halves. So we're going to go from hockey to soccer. You spend the first half of your life kind of in reproduction mode. And, if you read David Sinclair's work and the sirtuin genes moving from reproduction to longevity, it's interesting to see that we actually have a genetic element that drives this. So at about 45, 50, we see our body start to shift to longevity. Listen, again, when you start investing in the 401k, it's probably a good idea to start investing in longevity, not just supplements. And again, Spermidine Life is a good supplement. I think it's important, but you invest in exercise and good food and sleep and light and purpose.
Right on. So just circling back on that, I think that's great. So maybe early in their life, maybe people get you a little bit more traction out of integrating, time windows of eating or intermittent fasting or incorporating fasting. I know I incorporated fasting 1 day a week. Now it's almost 25 years ago. I was kind of ahead of the curve there. So I was fortunate on that. And I think it's a great practice. First, it gives you control. It allows a certain level of understanding. It's like, hey, I don't need to eat all the time.
Right.
Which is
when you get those enzymes, you get those fat utilization enzymes cranked up.
Which is great. But fasting isn't enough as we get longer because, I always say, one of the things in longevity work is they start adding all of these hormonal elements to longevity stuff. And I go, well, that's great, but that's like adding more trucks to the road.
Right.
What's in the factory for them to haul? They've got to have product. Exactly. And it would seem that spermidine would be one of those ingredients that needs to be on the truck if you're going for the long haul. So
this is
how do you measure
what
it?
we're seeing.
how do you measure it in the body? Like where would you get this tested? And then could you, follow, like one of the things that we love doing is like, okay, well, I can test what my levels are. I can take this supplement, and do I see an improvement over time to correlate with maybe how I feel? I like both sides of my intuitive feedback, what I'm experiencing,
Right.
but also the data to support it.
Listen, and coming from me, I'm a data guy. I wish I had a blood marker. We don't have it yet. We're working down deep in the cell. We have secondary markers that we see. And again, people who start taking spermidine, who obviously are low, one of the first things they notice is a change in their hair, skin, and nails. Because one of the byproducts of increased autophagy is the upregulation of epithelial stem cells. Okay. So those cells that make new skin, that turn into new nails and new hair, they get stemmier with improved autophagy. And this is one of the first things people notice. One of the other early indicators that people notice is they'll see a change in their sleep data. Are you an Aura guy? Are you an HRV sleep measurement guy?
Yeah, we're into the Aura rings, and
yep.
We've got a bunch of we test all kinds of different ones.
Me too. Yeah. What you'll see a lot of times is a change in your deep sleep patterns with improved autophagy. One of the things that happened with me that I love, we hear this a lot from our customers, is deep lucid dreaming. Yeah. Which I love. I love feeling like I'm tripping in my sleep, right? It's that's one of the things we get. Now we have a third group. That won't notice anything. They'll use the product for 60 or 90 days. They'll go off, and a lot of them within 2 weeks are like, okay, I didn't notice when I was on it, but I sure can't tell when I'm off it. Mm-hmm. And we get them back right away. And frankly, Wade, there's that fourth group. They just don't notice it. And you know what? They've probably got good autophagy. They've probably got some things going well for them. So that's what we see.
Got it. So dosages, what's the suggested dosage on these?
So the data suggests that your daily supplementation should be around 1 milligram a day. And that's actually what we put into our product. 2 tablets of Spermidine Life gives you 1 milligram a day of Spermidine. I would not be surprised to see us raise that level at some point in time. I'll tell you this, we have tested safety in Europe up to 8 milligrams a day with no safety issues. We are releasing a product this fall that will only be sold through physicians that is a 6 milligram per day product. So, so there's a lot of physicians that want to super dose their patients. So we've gone back and created a product for them. We have a lot of customers that are double dosing. They're going 2 times our recommended daily. And you know what? When the data supports raising that number, we will raise that number and we'll put it in the bottle. We won't ask you to buy twice as much, but right now the science says 1 milligram a day.
Got it. That's great. And do you take that with food or empty stomach?
Take it with food. Our team in Austria seems to think that having a little bit of fat will help carry that molecule across the gut. So, and we have a lot of people. I don't know if you're a bulletproof coffee guy. We have a lot of people that will break the capsules up into their bulletproof coffee. I'd rather do it with a cold bulletproof than a hot one. But people do it that way. But typically, and if you're going into a fast, take it with your last meal of the day before you fast.
Got it. Makes sense. We found a lot of supplements are carried well on fats. So.
Yeah, fats are. Listen, we've spent a long time, demonizing fats, and we've got to stop doing it. Fats are important. Quality fats are important, particularly the omega-3s. You cannot ignore the value that come with dietary intake of omega-3s. We have, again, the way we have we have so much sugar available to us in our food source. We have so many omega-6s available to our food source. So we've got to get our omega-3 contents up, because having that disbalance is problematic.
That's great. So for those who want to take advantage of this, they can go to spermidinelife.com.
No, .us. .us, spermidinelife.us.
Yep.
And if you use the code WADE25, you can get a 25% discount on your purchase.
Well, that's super generous. Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate that. Some of our listeners will take advantage of that. Where do you see the future, of your science, your career? Where do you anticipate this is going as you enter into the third period?
Man, I've quit guessing. Again, if you would have told me I'm sitting here talking to Wade Lightheart on a podcast about this crazy molecule called spermidine, if you'd have told me that 5 years ago, I said, well, you're obviously smoking crack. That's not going to happen. But here we are. And, it's been, again, back when I shifted from definition to mission, that was a mental decision to kind of pull back and quit trying to control, let the universe put you where you belong. I tell people I try to throw up a radar dish, and if every opportunity that I see or come along, I vet it. I want to understand it. I want to see it. When I left high level human performance at Ohio State and went into cannabis, I thought, well, I'm done with that area. And it was difficult. I mean, that was a really hard decision for me to make.
Sure.
But man, now I'm in this, we're working with biohackers and I'm talking to customers and we're working with HRV and HR and literally I'm back right in the middle of it at a level that I could have never predicted. So you know what? I'm going to keep waking up every day and loving what I do. I love to teach. I love to learn. I spend about 3 hours a day reading journal articles or reading books. I have a podcast feed that's ridiculous. So I'm a huge supporter of zone 2 cardiovascular work. I can't do zone 3 listening to podcasts. If I'm doing zone 3 out of 5, I've got to have some music going. Once I start doing real high intensity stuff, everything's off. You're focusing on what you're doing. But if I'm doing zone 3 stuff, I usually do it with music. But my zone 2 stuff, I've given myself permission. There's a lot of value to exercising in zone 2. It's a lot of mitochondrial development. There's just a lot of good things that come from that. I wouldn't recommend it necessarily for a college athlete. You need to shift your zones up a little bit. Yep. But once you finish up your college athletics, all their parents and the rest of the world, you know what? Zone 2 is a good place to be. And I do that with podcasts and books on tape. And, now that I'm back traveling again, I just absolutely devour books on, Audible books.
Love it. Can you share everybody where they can reach you, follow you, Instagram, Facebook, social media? All that
stuff? So you can find me. Listen, I've gotten Don Moxley locked down at most places. So I'm on Instagram at Don Moxley. I'm on Facebook at Don Moxley. I'm on LinkedIn at Don Moxley. You can find me at all those. Twitter, Don Moxley. My Twitter feed is typically where I'm pushing science information, longevity information, things like that. I don't have a strong Instagram game yet. I'm just not into taking pictures and doing that.
I get it. I have a team that handles that for me.
Part
of my old school barbell mentality is like, I want to get into it. I don't want to take a picture.
Oh, there's some people that are so good at it.
I know,
and I'm just like, I'm just not there. So Twitter is where I really push information. Now, Spermidine Life has Instagram, spermidinelife.us. We're on Facebook as well, spermidinelife.us. So you can follow us there. We're doing a better job of bringing our social media game up. And you're going to see us soon in Twitter and LinkedIn.
Don, this has been very informative. Wish you and your team at Spermidine Life the best of success, and we'll see you at probably the next Wake Up event out here in Orange County or in Los Angeles as we launch the.
Yeah, if not before, we're back. Listen, this whole longevity biohacking thing's big in Southern California, a lot bigger than Ohio. So I'm spending a lot of time on airplanes going back and forth.
Sweet. Well, look forward to seeing you soon. And for all our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode and take a chance and try Spermidine. Might be just the thing you're looking for to live long, live strong. And we're all about that at Bioptimizers. I'm Way-T Lightheart from Bioptimizers and the Awesome Health Podcast. Hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
At Bioptimizers, Our mission is to fix digestion. And a cornerstone of digestion is gut flora. P3OM is our patented probiotic formula. In fact, we call it the Navy SEALs of probiotics. You see, strong proteolytic or protein digesting activity is paramount to having a healthy gut flora. And of course, P3OM provides that. The good news is, unlike weaker probiotics, P3OM survives the digestion process. What it does is it basically multiplies the good guys while protecting you against pathogens, or what some people call the bad guys. P3OM really helps to rebuild your digestion. And what that allows you to do is to maximize nutrient uptake, energy, and metabolism. To find out more of how P3OM can help you, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.